So yeah, listen, we're here. We're going to start with the this MLS Next Pro teams being sent to different towns as affiliates, right? So the the league comes out and they say we want to expand our presence in the lower leagues of MLS Next Pro, not just our second teams. In just the last week, the second teams of both San Jose and the Galaxy have now given their operating rights to outside investors, allowing name changes to the Town FC and Ventura County FC, respectively. This pipeline is still a connection between the two clubs, where the players are tied to the first team. They get called up for loans, very similar to what it used to be in the past. That being said, the ownership and development of the club itself, the branding, the promotion of the club, the all of that sort of stuff is under somebody else. Somebody else is taking that, and it's very similar, in my opinion, to minor league baseball, where the farm teams at every level have different names. Using our beloved New York Mets as an example, New York Mets, located in Queens, have minor league affiliates in Syracuse, Binghamton, Brooklyn, and St. Lucie, Florida. Only two of them play under the name the Mets, while the others have more recognizable names like the Cyclones, which are historically relevant in the baseball world, and the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, which, listen, if I had my way, every team in every sport is having a name like the Rumble Ponies. But unfortunately, I am not a decision maker. I am just a supporter. So, instant thoughts just from that little spiel and anything that you've looked up. What are your thoughts here? Good,
I
bad?
I love it. I love it
Hey, get in.
because I am a what's that called? An alumni, an alumnus. I don't know what the singular one is.
You're
I
an alum.
forget.
You're an
I'm an
alum.
alum. Sure, that works. I'm an alum from Binghamton University. And let me tell you, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies was a hot topic in the town of Binghamton. And if we can get MLS to get to that level, I think that's phenomenal. That's great. It's fun activities for these small towns. It gets the community there involved. They're going to be dedicated to it because, what else is going on in Binghamton? There's really not much else going on besides the Rumble Ponies. So
And the bus stop. Don't forget the bus stop.
they also have at least there used to be. I think there might still be. There was a minor league hockey team in Binghamton also. I
Yeah,
think for like the
I
Ottawa
remember that.
Senators. It was a weird one, but
Yeah,
anyway, I think it's great. I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. If we can bring back some cool team names, I think that's great also. Gives a little homage to early MLS days now that we're starting to kill off all the fun names and make them all really boring ones. And that's coming from a fan of a team who has a very boring name. So yeah, I'm on board. I am all on board with this.
that sucks.
I know, no arguing for you.
Yeah, I was really ready to dig into you. No, you hit it. You hit it spot on the head. Right, more football is good football. I actually was just having a conversation on Twitter here with. Let me get the with Matt Baker from Flyover Footy and a St. Louis podcast. Um, he is one of the supporters of this, and I was saying the same thing that there are some things that go against it. We'll talk about it. We'll give both sides of the argument as we always do. Um, but at the end of the day, more footy is good footy. Um, and there's greater chance for success, less chance for failure because you've got the backing of an MLS team to do this. Like all over, it feels like a win just on paper, right? So all over Twitter right now, the voices that be continue to scream that, you know, the first thing, right? They pointed out, and the Town FC is now renaming and moving to Marega, I believe is how you pronounce the city they're moving to. And the first, the people who love to scream the loudest, MLS is using this as a way to kill USL. Here we go again, right? In my opinion, that's not at all what's happening. But this is a really smart idea for MLS, using existing teams to create somewhat of a presence in other markets that usually wouldn't get to. Is great. One, to spread recognition of the team, but also to grow the game as a whole, right? With the outside marketing allowing others to grow this brand, of a new team, Ventura County, the town. I know DC is going to Baltimore at some point. You're able to create this isn't just a reserve team. right? This is another thing, like you mentioned, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, the Brooklyn Cyclones, right? This is something that isn't just a feeder. It's another thing you can do for a community that doesn't have a pro sport outlet, right? So the Brooklyn Cyclones, I use that is you know, they're a Mets farm team, but they're also their own thing. Like they have their own promos. I know when I'm driving back home from Alfred and I'm on Long Island, I see commercials for the Brooklyn Cyclones games and come down to see the baseball and all this stuff, right? And Binghamton the same way when I was, in that area as well. You are able to grow interest in something that isn't just a development team because it has a different name in a different area. Um, you know, it's how do I say it? Like you don't have somebody going to me like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go to the Galaxy 2 game, right? Like why would you go to the Galaxy 2 game if you can just go to the Galaxy game? But no, I'm going to the Ventura County game, right? They're right next, they're in my hometown. They're an easy game to see. And this person, you know, homegrown A, balls out every week. And he has a chance of going to the first team, right? I'm excited to see that. Maybe that means I'm going down to a Galaxy game next week or whatever, right? Like the chance to grow is so much bigger than just having a second team. So I'm really, really a big fan of this. And again, they don't sell a ton of tickets, right? I was looking at the affiliate team tickets and attendance. I think they average between like 2 and 7,000 a game, depending on who you are. But again, that's totally fine if you've got the backing of an MLS team where they've got the funds to support that. 2 to 7,000 fans for a startup team might not be sustainable depending on your market, right? So again, it gives a whole bunch of positive. It gives positives. Like I think it's a really good smart move from a personal MLS perspective, but also again in the grander scheme of things, right? The whole why would I go see a team that's 3 hours away, then goes away if you put something like this closer because it's an entity, right?
Yeah, I wholly agree.
Yeah. But again, like every decision that MLS makes, you have to consider more than just themselves. The big argument against this, and I'll get your points on it, is that they are entering areas where other teams exist, and that's a rough estimate because I don't really, again, I don't know the geographical landscape of California, unfortunately. But there are two teams that currently reside in the respective area. One being the Oakland Roots in USL Championship, and the other being Ventura County Fusion in USL 2. What are your thoughts about them going into places where there are already other teams relatively close?
I guess it kind of goes back to that same conversation we were having last episode where if you're MLS, what I don't really see why there's an incentive for you to be like, oh, I can't like take this opportunity to partner with this team because I don't want to be stepping on USL's toes. It's not like they have any obligation to USL. And you can argue one way or another whether you agree with that. I'm not saying whether I necessarily agree or disagree with that, but from MLS's perspective, I would imagine I don't see why they wouldn't do it. They're going to put their own interests first and whatever they feel is best, they're going to do. And if that means partnering up with a team that has a USL affiliate in that same area, then they're just going to do it. Like there's no reason for them not to do it. And quite frankly, I don't know if I would see a reason for them to not do it if it meant that like, okay, now we're sticking with the branding of LA Galaxy 2 as opposed to Ventura County, which I think we both just agreed based on our previous discussion that we like it better seeing them go with a team like Ventura County. So uh, I get the argument, I do, but I also just don't think the MLS has an incentive to not make those types of moves.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing I didn't add when we were talking about that is the reason why people are upset about this is that they think that they're doing this intentionally to kill off whatever team is in that area, right? This is their way of strangling the USL and making their presence known instead. So here are the problems I have with that. Firstly, MLS Next Pro, third division. which despite the name change and team change and whatever, still just a bunch of development teams playing each other. So if your USL championship team can't outdraw that, the problem isn't the Next Pro team. The problem's you, right? Like let's call a spade and recognize that if that's the problem isn't the team that came in. Because here's the other thing, right? There's this world where anti-MLS, pro-rel, whatever you want to call them, whoever they support or hate, have this vision that if this was the way that things were, any team in the country can pop up anywhere in the world. There's no territory rights. There's no, there's no prevention of anything. You can have a billion teams in every small city in the United States, and they can grow and climb up the pyramid, right? Well, if a lower league team starts in your backyard and then starts to beat you out for fan retention, signings, stadium deals, whatever, in a pro-rel system, that's fine. That's the game. But if it happens here, well, this is MLS trying to kill, right? So now we're playing double-edged sword, and you can't have it both ways. You can't say that USL to MLS is, fair, and then MLS doing that to USL is trying to kill, right? So you're going to have that argument there, and I don't think it's a fair argument in that sense, where you're going to come in and you're here preaching about how we need pro-rel so that every team in the country can come up and be successful and all that. And now a team pops up and you're like, oh, wait, they can't be there because they're going to kill off another team. That's the whole system, right? So again, double-edged sword there, but I don't believe that there is anything happening to intentionally smother or kill things. I know people are going to be like, oh, you're an MLS podcast. Of course you don't. You never see. Okay, like have your way, right? You pick and choose what you get to say. But really, it's always going to be about how they go about it, right? And that's always the way that it is, right? Right now, with the clubs that are coming in, I don't see this being like a direct attack, like, oh, Oakland is having a semi-successful USL side. We're going to put our team 20 minutes away, and we're going to crush their dreams. And that's not what this is about, right? Same thing with Ventura County. I don't know where Ventura County is from Carson. Let me quick check here. Yeah, Ventura County is 2 hours away from uh, Carson, California, in LA. So, and again, maybe I have the wrong Ventura. I don't know, but that's what Google just pulled up, right? So this isn't like we're gonna come in and pick and choose who we're gonna put it wherever you want, right? Like this again. I just mentioned Oakland and Morega, right? Two separate cities, 20 minutes apart. In Pro Rel Dream World, this is like butter on the bread. You've got two teams right next to each other, lower divisions that get to form rivalries and all this stuff. Ventura County is a USL 2 side. They've been around since 2007. Their last reported attendance, just over 1,000 people. So the moves here bring Morega, a pro level team, and Ventura, another pro level team, because USL 2 isn't a pro level, right? So you're spreading the game, you're increasing the amount of higher quality football around your state. Again, I don't see it as a bad thing right now, and we'll talk about this in a second. But I was curious if you see it as a negative.
I'm trying to understand how LA Galaxy 2 getting a team in Ventura County, and maybe this is also just me not having a California geography sense, but when I Googled Ventura County, it looks like it's just north of Los Angeles and looks like it is literally multiple hours away from Oakland, California. So I don't understand how that is. This move is a direct competition for the Oakland Roots. I don't know if the other team you mentioned is much closer to Ventura County.
Well, and that let me redirect you there. The Oakland roots are closer to the town FC. That's the close one. That's the 20 minutes
Okay.
away. Yeah. But again, the other one, right? The Ventura County is like 2 hours away from Carson, and you are now competing with the Ventura County Fusion, who pull 1,000 fans a game. And again, this is something that I can definitely see being a problem for people who see it that way, right? Like, oh, you're going in to try and smother them. I don't believe that's the intentional cause. Like they're not looking at it and picking and choosing these areas to do it. They're just saying this is where we want to put our team. We've got a stadium that'll take it, and these people are going to buy the name and grow the brand. And again, realistically, right? Oakland Roots and the town should be totally fine. The town is going to be a third division side. Oakland Roots the second. There should be no problems, right? With Ventura County, you're going up a level, right? So hopefully they buy into that and grow the game in that area. So
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's gonna be teams that are near each other, right? Like, you're not putting a team out in like Gilroy, California, because there's not enough people there, right? Like, they're gonna be there's gonna be teams aggregated in similar locations because that's where the people are. Like, that's just the plain of it, right? Like, there's probably a number of teams in and around the New York metro area because guess what? That's where all the people are. So yeah, there's going to be teams that are nearby each other, and I think it's a silly argument to say that MLS is affiliating with teams with the goal of trying to shut down USL, because what benefit is that to MLS? USL is no threat to MLS at all, like in the slightest. It makes no sense, this argument.
yeah, and I'm just looking here at other areas, right? Like so, for example, Anaheim, right? I wonder if Anaheim it's closer. I don't think it's got a pro team to the very quick um, Google search that I did. They've got some uh, youth teams here in Anaheim FC, for example. I'm wondering if that might have been a better spot to grow the game, right? So and that is one of the things I can see this being negative is picking the wrong place. But again, if you're trying to grow the brand and get recognition, right? The Galaxy in Carson, Ventura County, 2 hours away. Now that's kind of a trip, right? Can you go maybe to Santa Ana? So Santa Ana has a UPSL side, right? So then that begs the question, right? If you were to go to Anaheim and Santa Ana, relatively close. Again, I'm not super sure how long it would take to get there, right? But how close would too close be if you don't want all these teams mixing, right? Eventually, you're going to find a bubble that overlaps with this, to your point, right? So
If you hate
I
MLS
don't
enough, your bubbles are big enough.
exactly right. And here's the thing: the country's huge. You will be able to find places to put them, but needs to have the infrastructure already, right? A college field, a a multi-purpose arena, right? Something that you can go and say tangibly, this is going to be where like there's no startup, right? You need to have all this stuff in place to do this because you've already got the league ready. This isn't something to grow; it's something that's already there. The, here's the biggest problem I'm going to have here, right? And there was a speculation tweet, right? Nothing substantial, but there was somebody that was like, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to see DC go to Baltimore, which I believe is already confirmed, and Philly go to Pittsburgh." And everyone's like, whoa, when did Philly start talking about putting their thing to Pittsburgh? And dude's like, no, just hypothetically, right? If MLS teams start going and picking their teams and moving them 4.5 hours across their state into the region of another USL side, then I start having problems with this, right? Because then that is clearly and I mean every team doing it, right? Like if you are in, what's the smallest state with the MLS side right now?
Hmm, probably the Revs.
I would say let's say New England, right? New England picks up their New England Revs too and puts them right next to the brand new Rhode Island USL team, right? That problem wrong should not happen, right? And again, regardless of the fact that it is one or the other, the more teams that start to do it, the more I start getting a little like, don't know about that, right? The Oakland one, my jury's still out on in terms of location, and I think the major issue with a bunch of people with that move is the owner, this guy John Fisher. I guess he's the guy who tried to move or who successfully moved the A's out of Oakland, is now involved with this. Um, Again, don't know much about him, so I'm not going to dive in there. But if you start seeing these things start to pop up directly next to USL side, USL championship side, whatever, right? That is where I start to have the problem. You don't need, the country's massive. There's so many untapped markets. You don't need to go where USL already is. Let them do their things. Let you do your things. But here's the other side of it. I think it's a stupid decision, right? You're going to go put a team of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids in a place like Pittsburgh that's got a 7,000 fan stadium with, the massive following and everything that comes with it. And you're just like, oh yeah, we're going to start pulling away because our kids are playing here. Like, that's just a dumb business decision, which is why I don't think that's the way it's going to happen. But again, we'll see how it goes. Your thoughts?
No, I agree. I don't think I really have anything else to add on that.
You never have anything else to add.
What do you mean? What do you think? I've just been saying nothing this whole episode? I mean, I probably am to you. It's probably going in one ear, out the other.
What?
Exactly. Point proven.
All right. Well, like I said, the guy, and the other major issue is who they're going to get in bed with, right? For lack of a better term. So again, we mentioned this guy. I think his name is John Fisher. I might have that wrong, but MLS needs to be intelligent with who they're in bed with, right? Less for public image as much as it is for stability, right? If you're going to give it to somebody who has a history of running pro teams into the ground, probably not the brightest idea for that guy to build the brand of your now openly named affiliate. So I want to ask you about then the question regarding Daddy Don's nice comment of MLS being the ATM of the football world.
Wait,
So the we're going to come back to this in other sections, but he's talking about how everybody is positively looking on our league, and the next thing is, how do we keep talented 14-year-olds who would not be playing in America if MLS Next Pro didn't exist? So basically saying that if MLS Next Pro was non-existent, it was just USL, NISA, just the way it was already, all of our talented players, instead of playing in USL, would just go overseas.
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I mean, you could probably I'm sure you can find an example of one or two that would go overseas if they had to just play in USL. But if you're playing for Atlanta United 2 or RBNY 2 in the USL Championship, is it really that different than playing an MLS Next Pro to the point where you'd be like, that's it, pack it up, I'm done, I can't do this, send me to Europe now. I'm not having it anymore. Like, that seems like a bit of a ridiculous quote, a bit of a stretch, if I had to say the least.
Yeah, so this is one of those billboard tweets or billboard comments that I think you're taking completely let me rephrase that, not taken out of context, spoken out of context, right? Because the whole thing is talking about Christian Pulisic, right? At 14 years old, Christian Pulisic is playing at Hershey. He's playing at this high level in I don't know, PA Classics or whatever team he was playing for. Dortmund sees him and he makes the move to Europe. The comment is, to me, and again, maybe this is me looking at things always with a positive lens instead of a let's burn the world to the ground because I'm upset about something. I think he's talking about, how do we keep the super talented 1% of players who either have the chance to go pro here or take a risk overseas? How do we give them a pathway that's logical at 14 years old to play here? That being said, the way that he phrased it is completely wrong, right? The way that he phrased it, and maybe it's the way that it was reported, I don't know, I wasn't in the room, right? But the way that he phrased it was, yeah, so if a kid doesn't want to play, or if there was no MLS Next Pro pathway, then excuse me, no MLS Pro pathway, then all of our best players are then going overseas and playing in their academies. How do we keep them here? Which is fair because those sorts of players are going to take that offer over a USL offer, if that makes sense, right? Like that is what he meant to say by that. I'm fairly certain, but he phrased it terribly, right? It makes him sound completely out of touch. But when Pulisic was playing, there was no USL a decade ago, right? Or it was just getting started, so they didn't have a pathway. We didn't really have a pathway, so it was either stick around in your club or go overseas. And when you're that talented and somebody says, "Hey, come play overseas," you go overseas. So now it's saying, how do we build upon that, right? MLS Next Pro comes in. What he doesn't consider is the fact that there are still other options, right? Lots of USL teams have academies now or systems to get to the top where they are then getting sold on to Europe, by the way. Lots of, and again, NASL was around at the time, but wasn't doing much. NISA still hasn't, and I don't think NISA is even going to be around much longer considering where they're at. You know, it's really USL, MLS, or Europe. And the top players, the Christian Pulisics, the Caven Sullivans, those levels of players, and as straightforward and brash as this may sound, those sorts of players are not choosing USL sides because they don't have to. When you're talking about the majority of players that are choosing between maybe an MLS Next Pro side or a USL development side, different story. But that's not what I think they meant to say there. But the quote was terrible.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, I guess. I feel like the way I read it was that without the MLS Next Pro system in place, which to me is just saying whatever we had previously before that, he's saying that players would go overseas, or young talented players would go overseas, and the example uses Pulisic. I was looking at it as the process we had in place beforehand, which was seeing teams either have affiliates with USL teams or having their second teams in USL, I guess, be the pathway to getting into the first team. I don't really like if that's the comparison, and maybe I'm just looking at the quote wrong or differently. If that's the comparison he's making, I think that's a bad comparison because there was still a pathway to the MLS sides, regardless of whether it was in an MLS controlled league or if it was in USL. So I don't really see how there's a difference with like, don't get me wrong, I really like the Next Pro system that they set up. I think it's exciting to see the young players play against the other young players. It's a system that is built in the other leagues around the world as well. Like they have the Youth Premier League, for example. They don't have their youth teams playing in like League Two against teams like Wrexham and Forest Green, right? Like they're playing against other people their age, which I think makes more sense. And so I still support the fact that we've gone to MLS Next Pro, but I don't think that there wasn't a pathway previously. And you could speak to it because Red Bull had a number of players that came through Red Bull 2 to work their way into the first team and then inevitably go over to Europe.
Right. So I think the big caveat there, right, and I think he makes a lot of really good points, is that when MLS was using USL teams as their affiliates, those USL teams themselves did not have academy systems. Or so it was either you're picking the MLS academy system, then getting loaned to that USL side, or if you're, like I said, for example, New York City was with Wilmington, I think, the Hammerheads. Um, Wilmington, I think, is Connecticut. New York
But
City
it was
is
Delaware.
Delaware. Yeah, still, right. New York City is New York City. That is Delaware. So if you are a kid playing in Delaware around that team, there's no way for you to climb to the top because that academy system hasn't been there. So how do we get more players to be a part of that? There was the MLS Academy system, which was a good start, but it wasn't the end all be all. Now, teams all across the USL Championship and even a lot of them in USL 1 now, when Lexington FC came in and stepped into our area in Lexington, they were the biggest thing that they were wanted to stress was that they are still going to have a pathway to the top of their team, right? You're not going all the way to the top because that's not where we are, but there is a path for you to be in our youth system, work your way up, and end up in our first team. From there, then we move you on, we sell you whatever, and you can continue your journey. That wasn't a thing. It just like, I did a quick Google search of some of the NASL sites. There was very, very few. Like, I don't remember a Cosmos Academy. And again, people can correct me if I'm wrong, but personally, I don't remember. And because I was a part of the MetroStar Academy when they came to for intermediate school and helped me do a rainbow. Good times when I was a child. So again, the quote sucks, right? The way that it is phrased and the way that he phrased it, he didn't think through, I think, what he meant to say. But now there are tons more options there, and that's what he hasn't taken into account. Is he mentions Christian Pulisic and thinks everybody's going to realize, oh, we're talking about the kids who are going to be in the national team. How do we keep them in MLS instead of going to Europe? People read that quote and think, oh man, anybody who's playing, if they're not in MLS, can't, they're going nowhere because USL doesn't exist, NISA doesn't exist, UPSL, MPSL, none of them exist. I don't think that's what they were saying. So either way, I think it's a good idea to expand the presence of football in the country, right? The game at the high levels is important to see all over the place. So if I'm, if I'm in California and a team like the Galaxy are putting their new team like Ventura in and around my area, by the way, and they're in different. I just looked up. They're in different stadiums, Ventura County and the Ventura Fusion. So they're not even overlapping in terms of where they play. I think it's a good idea. I think it's good to expand, and it's encourage growth through controlled investment, and that's the important part. As long as it stays that way and it's not a plan to destroy everything around you, then we move, right? Move on, have fun. Let's continue to grow the game in all areas, right? Because that's how we get better.
Okay.
We need something that you like completely disagree with, because you are just sitting there listening to me yap. Sounds like somebody didn't type up any notes for this episode. That's what it sounds like.
I did not.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. You
Well,
didn't.
that's not. I mean, I didn't type up notes, but that doesn't mean I didn't do my due diligence. But I just did it on other topics. One
Yeah.
of which is CONCACAF Champions League. If we